find the first victim for my, let's say, introductory question, because deep tech has been quite a controversial topic. And so maybe, as we have a guest from the EPO, we can start, Wiebke, with you, because I think it would be quite interesting to see how we can distinguish deep tech from other technological sectors, and why intellectual property actually for this sector is so important. So.
Yes, I'm happy. So good morning or good afternoon. We are kind of in the middle here. Those who were already here in the panel before might have heard, I'll give you my definition on deep tech or how we see it. These are startups, spin-outs, working in those major impact technologies that, like for example, that will have a major impact or that have a challenging work in scientific research and engineering technologies like quantum, biomedical, additive materials as well as you see. So what is common to all of them is that they need extensive R&D, and they might have a high impact, high societal impact in the future as well. So they are not this quick turnaround innovations, but they need long development cycles and as well substantial capital. And that's actually, I think, where IP becomes critical. So it's first of all to protect those breakthrough ideas. Secondly, to build strategic partnerships through licensing, etc., to set up a IP strategy. And not lastly, but also to attract investment for this capital. And that's where, that's what the EPO studies showed consistently. Last thing, we have a deep tech finder, so we have an online search tool, and this deep tech finder, we define deep tech, the tech not really, but we leave it to the users to define. So we have technological filters, and you can scroll through and then define your own focus areas. We are a bit less limited here in this definition.
But I know that we will, all the participants will have a chance to find more out about deep finder later on. But coming back to the first distinction, maybe Artis, you could, from the kind of Latvian side, jump in.
From perspective of European patent attorney,
yes.
Deep tech company is the company which tries to solve long-standing problem or emerging problem with inventive way. So it's high-risk activities, which at the end, if it's successful, these activities are of high reward, I would say like this. Mm-hmm. Because one of the criteria for getting patents is to have inventive step for invention.
Now that, I think that a lot of people who work in this area, I think that was kind of a warm-up question, but I know that we have as well in our panel, we have Mārcis, and I know that the partnership between universities, industries, and then sometimes also policymakers, should be structured to strengthen the IP, especially as well for commercialization and deep tech. How do you see that in practice?
Yeah, well, I think there are quite a lot of different entities involved. You mentioned universities, startup companies, developed industry, policymakers, and maybe depending on your field and TRL levels you work at and what you want to achieve, the situation can be a little bit different case by case. However, one thing that I see in common, especially if you want to partner with multiple universities, multiple research teams, maybe with industry, and build your startup on top of that, is to define who will own IP from the get-go before you have even started your work on that. Who brings background IP, who will own the forward IP created, and that will take care of a lot of problems that can arise in future when your project is successful, when you want to approach industry and build a startup, make business, and you can't really because you haven't negotiated with your partners in the first place. So when you have the idea, when you know the consortium of research teams and industry that participates, it's a good idea to lay it out on contract on paper, how we approach this. And of course, for that to be efficient, you need to have the idea and the business model in the back of your mind from the get-go, so that you're not doing science and research for the sake of it, but you actually tackle a common issue or goal for the consortium, and then you know how to commercialize it afterwards.
Yeah, not long ago I had a very interesting discussion and with some investors, and a key note was that when you pitch an idea and you try to invest, there's one question, not one question, but one aspect. If the investor understands that he knows a bit more about IP than you, it's over. So it's kind of in the same, goes in the same line. So, but I see that we have somebody who still hasn't spoken. So Dāvids, maybe on this you have your thoughts?
You mean the same question on...
Yes, the same question, yes.
Okay. I believe in Latvia IP transfer to new spin-off companies doesn't work. There are a lot of reasons why it doesn't work. For those who doesn't know maybe, but we have a public discussion right now, and there are some initiatives to do the change on the law as well, because the science law has some limitations to do the technology transfer in a feasible way. I don't know how to name it, but it's not just about the law. There are still some challenges on the university and science institution side, because some policies should be in place. And it's not just about the processes as well, it's about the scientists, which has to know and implement those actions, right? So I believe we are in a very low position right now in this sense, but there are a lot of opportunities for us for the future.
No, I can only agree, and sadly you picked up the topic of the law and scientific institutions, because then I can talk for 15 minutes just about that. But as you said, it's about the groundwork, and I do agree this is something that we have to work on together to make the fundamentals right, the main principles, so that the system can thrive and the universities and industry can work well together to commercialize. But now, turning to our colleague from EPO. I know that EPO does a lot, has a lot of support activities. There's a EPO Academy. There are a lot of, let's say, initiatives which are done also through our office. So could you describe a little bit what's the most interesting, especially when it comes to deep tech ventures, and what the EPO has to offer right now?
Yes, with pleasure. So yeah, there are a lot of initiatives, so it's not a two-folded, like a multi-folded approach to this, multi-layered. First of all, I think it's the fees. There's, since a certain time now, a fee reduction set in place for, we still call it small and medium-sized enterprises. So if you qualify for this, then you have a reduction for all the EPO fee structure, which lowers the barrier, the financial barrier actually to engage in this IP strategy here. Secondly, for sure, it's to mention the unitary patent. So the unitary patent gives as well gives a post-grant protection throughout 17 now countries which are hearing ratified the unitary patent court, and this simplifies those procedures, but also are really real cost reduction, not to start already with translation costs, etc. So this is the financial aspects, I think, which is helpful for then the EPO Academy. As you said, there's lots of documents and e-learnings and events organized to guide you as an inventor through this, how to file, but also how to see and get knowledge, or how to leverage your IP. It's not only targeted to inventors, but as well to investors, and with the idea as well to create networking. There's the ESPASnet, 150 million documents, patent documents that everyone can search. It's an inspiring kind of tool as well. I like to go through. It's easy to search, just start to get your own idea of your context, technical context as well. And then, last but not least again, we set up the observatory. I'm working for the Chief Economist unit, which is partner of the observatory, and here actually it is the objective to create this knowledge about innovation, the innovation context, to give more support even so to patent practitioners, professionals, inventors and investors. We do a lot of studies, economic studies and finance studies as well, and targeted on specific technical areas like quantum. We bring out the quantum. There was plastics, smart grids together with the International Energy Agency. So a lot of collaborations there which are interesting. We publish case studies. These are really interesting, I think, for all of you if you are interested to see what other startups, what their IP journey was. And then last but not least, we created the Deep Tech Finder that I will present later on, which is an online search tool where we bring together information about patents, so patent documentation and patent data with finance data on specifically startups, spin-outs. Yeah, we say spin-outs, spin-offs, spin-outs, and universities.
Yeah, I think that I can certainly agree that there's a lot because we are heavily cooperating with the EPO. But one of the things which was not mentioned, which is also very, very useful, is also the Patlib network, which is also a very good tool that we do implement and work together with universities to not only to get the knowledge in, but also to create kind of a perfect platform for collaboration. But now maybe we can jump to one of the most, I wouldn't say most interesting, but it's kind of a very pertinent question. And that is, maybe we can start here with Dāvids, because or no, maybe let's start with our patent attorney here. So when it comes to deep tech, it is quite it's quite a specific area, and usually the glaring question is, when is the right time actually to for a deep tech venture to think about the academic research and intellectual property, and so what should they take into account when they think when they should start really?
I would say you have to start in the beginning when you have idea, because when we talk about filing patent application, it's a one step in your IP strategy as such. So I would say it's in the beginning you start with thinking about IP. And then it's very crucial to understand that there's general rule of novelty. So if you disclose your idea or some technical information and it's not yet filed as a patent application, you lose novelty. So that's a very crucial thing to remember for deep tech startups. And it's quite complicated thing, because startups they need to do pitching. Their ideas are not so already complete, and that's how they can lose a lot of IP, basically. It's like giving away IP if it's not captured by filing patent applications or design registrations. So you have to think about IP very early. I would say you have to make a culture in your company that all your creative daily work is your IP. Your creativity should be captured, and then you have to think how you can capture that, your creativity. Because otherwise, it's not a fairy tale. Your competitors will just take it and maybe won't say even thank you.
No, that's true. So it comes back to what Mats mentioned, that you have to, at the beginning already, not only have the knowledge, but also to agree how it is structured and what steps you need to take and how you need to protect that. And I mean, that's the core business of EPO. So Wiebke, what would you say? Your
Yeah.
thoughts are very similar?
Yes, I think I just can confirm what Martin said. I think you have to start in the beginning to think about your IP strategy, not only for or mostly actually maybe for the public disclosure, so that you don't jeopardize your patents rights that that you do not create your own novelty anticipating prior art by disclosing your ideas even to investors or in pitches, for example. That said, doesn't mean that the filing has to come directly and soon. There is another reflection to be done. Maybe filing also needs the resources. So there's a right time. You need the resources. You need to have a certain maturity as well in your technologies. So you have to see when is the right time for the filing. And for this, I think you can consult the documentation of the EPO or something, but also your national patent offices are helpful partners in this, I think, to see if you file nationally first and internationally or European later on. So all these, there are a lot of questions to be answered. But if the question comes down when to think about IP strategy, then I think it's today and now. That's the answer.
Honestly, it's very heartwarming for me to hear that, but actually that's something that daily we are exposed to, and sadly, it's usually not the case when you start something. And when we explain that, there is such a thing as IP strategy, and that you should think about that firsthand, it's usually in many cases something that would come after. I mean, now we are busy with something else, and then we'll think about that. And sadly, then we see a lot of problems later on. But I see that, and I think David would also like to join in, maybe, on this question, or maybe you have a different perspective.
Yeah,
maybe you have a more specific period when to start to think about that.
I believe I can give some perspective on spin-off company, from a spin-off company perspective. And we had experienced different scenarios in our past, but one thing what we recognize is that you have to do it early on, as it was said, because and the early on is when you do the research in the university, in fact. So the technology transfer centers are in charge to do this kind of check on IP, because we have had those cases when some publications coming out, and you see that you lose some opportunity for the future. And in many cases, when you publish something which was not supposed to be published, you may harm your initiative to do the technology transfer as a spin-off or similar. But I believe the biggest challenges are coming when you are running the company already, because there is always the question when is the best moment, and we have been seeing quite a lot of those cases when you are in a TRL3 or TRL4 and you have those first initial discussions with investors, and you have quite a big pressure from investor side, because if you don't have an IP, you are not like a very attractive investment. But the same case, many companies don't have a feasible business case, which means they lack customers, they lack a very, very known use case, and you know very well that those factors are quite important for a good IP, right? So you have to juggle between those two. My personal opinion is that you have to postpone it as much as you can. And in majority of cases, I've seen it's beneficial. But all the time you have those external factors like investors. First of all, they ask it a lot. You have some threats from competitors. In my life, I just experienced once that there was a real threat. I believe it very much depends from the industry you are. There are industries which are very dynamic and which are more. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend, if you ask, to do a patent before you have a very clear use case.
That's true, because there's a deadline as well. There's a time, there's a lifespan for each patent, and you have to make the best use of it. That's true.
And my worst experience was that we have been running through those cycles of investments, and you are not there for a seed round, but you have to pay your 100,000 for patent, and you are in a big problem. You need to pay your bills, and you don't have a seed round. And this was a very typical situation when you do the IP too early.
Mm-hmm. But maybe, I don't want to leave you or let you off the hook straight away. I mean, from the practical point of view, now when we discuss this, in your opinion, what are the practical or real-life misconceptions by researchers, by investors, when it comes to IP?
Just reframe it once again.
What are the misconceptions that researchers usually have for IP? I mean, it's a question more or less about what you already said, but from a different perspective. Because one thing is you know how to use it, but then you probably have a picture in your head, you know what it should be, and sometimes it's not that. So what are the misconceptions that usually you see that?
There is an overall misconception in the industry, which is about why we do the patent as such. And this is about that majority of us doesn't really understand that it's purely business related. And you don't do the patent just in sake of the patent. And it's not about getting some new star on that you do some excellence on some topic, and in majority of cases people around me doesn't see the whole picture. What happens when you go for a patent? How does it affect the business, and what are the kind of consequences of this process as well? Mm-hmm. Because in fact, when you go to the IP from a business model perspective, it's just one of the elements. So we talk just about the research element, and this is your research which you use for value creation and development for technology. In fact, your customer doesn't care about your patents. Who cares about your patents is like your investors, like company owners, and maybe some partners who respect the patents, right? But this misconception is quite broad, that we don't really understand
that's true. We have a saying in the office that a patent without use is just a piece of paper, which currently is not even a piece of paper anymore because it's electronic. So completely nothingness then. But Mats, maybe you have some experience.
From what I've seen on university side of things, and maybe before creating startup companies or spin-offs, is that maybe researchers have a misconception about IP as such. So there are people who might think that IP starts to exist only when you register it as a patent, and that you need to do that to actually apply your knowledge and your skills and what you've created, which is a lot of times not really the case. As David's mentioned, you really need to have a need and a goal for a patent, otherwise it's just a piece of paper. And there might be a lot of IP application cases where you actually can get further ahead without having one. So maybe a little bit of education for researchers on what IP actually is, what is background IP, what is foreground IP, and how we can apply that for a business model. One route is through patents, but there might be others, especially if you go into aerospace and defense industry. There is a reason why the larger corporations do their in-house R&D, and you don't really know about what they are doing on a daily basis on the outside world. Because as mentioned, when you go for a patent or when you publish a research paper, you disclose quite a lot of information. So maybe this needs to be viewed as a tool rather than something that secures your IP.
No, certainly. I mean, all the IP rights, I think, are certainly just, they're just tools. That's not end mean, and I think that's why TTO networks, PatLibs, that's why they are so important to have that knowledge for researchers as well. But now that we have that out of the way, if we get to the point, so what are the different types or avenues I can take? When somebody comes to you as a patent attorney, what would you say? Which are the best roads for a deep tech spin-off to take?
IP managing?
Yes. Yes.
But going back to the previous question, I would say I would agree with Davids that IP is a tool. It's like having a plane. You can have a plane, but if you don't know how to fly it, there's no sense. Yes. When you know how to fly it, when you know how to manage patents, then you can fly far away. Regarding patents and commercialization, yes, there's various ways. Today, at the stage, I can just tell I can tell to the public because many things are confidential, business strategies. But basically, these are three things. It's a licensing, and licensing can be in various types: solo, exclusive, simple licensing. If you get lucky with your technology that gets standardized, then it's a different story about licensing. Basically, licensing, it's like making a deal. If someone asks me, please send me a standard license agreement, I'm saying an empty Word document saying that's standard. There's a lot of things to do. That's the one. The second is selling patents, and that's where it works very well with the companies which are basically also very successful ones. There's a trend for successful companies. If you are consistent in building your IP, you have more entities to sell or make a deal. So the sale of IP is also one of the second one. And the third one is you can increase the value of company with your IP, and also increase capital of your company by evaluation of your IP. So these are the three main, functions of commercialization of IP.
Okay, but then Darius, if you have a spin-off and you go, which one would you say is more suitable, or is it dependent on the situation?
There was a case last year. We did a small survey in Baltics and some Scandinavian investors as well, and we have been asking what are their thoughts about licensing in deep tech, and overall opinion was negative. And honestly speaking, I was a bit surprised about it, because the licensing, I thought, is a very convenient way how does, for example, university can really do the technology transfer. It's quite works well, but you see the businesses are like they are going through the cycles, and there is some initial cycle which we say as a pre-seed cycle, when you have kind of trying to establish your business operations. And then you have a seed, and then you go forward, and in each of those cycles, expectations from investors are different. For example, in a pre-seed cycle, the licensing works very well, but at the same time, they require ownership of IP in many of those cases in a seed cycle. And it's a bit frustrating, and my opinion is that you have to find a way how you secure IP ownership from the very beginning, and I don't believe that licensing is a sustainable format. And all the others, like joint ventures and similar, are very demanding from engaging potential investors in a long-term perspective, and it's quite a complex process. But yeah. I would say if universities goes into spin-off companies as investors, would be the most feasible way in a context where we are living right now in Europe.
Thank you very much. And on that note, all I can say is that it's only difficult the first time around you go. The next time it becomes easier and easier. So thank you very much for everybody who has been here and listened to our panel. I see a lot of hungry faces, so I give the word back to you. And thank you very much to all the panelists.
A round of applause to the panelists and our excellent moderator. Thank you, Agris, as well.